All right, everybody, we're ready for our next talk, and I have to introduce my student because she is awesome. Victoria Barkley is one of our best computer science students, and she was in software engineering last semester, and they worked on this thing called Gamification Marketplace for me, which is super fun, and I'll let her explain it. Take it away.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Victoria Barkley, and today I will be presenting Gamification Marketplace to you. Gamification Marketplace is a class project that we completed in our CS 491 Software Engineering 2 class in the fall 2022 semester. This project was a semester long, so it took roughly 14 weeks for us to complete, and it was a team project. And it included myself and 4 other members whose names are mentioned in the document and whose information is listed at the end of the PowerPoint. This project was overseen by Professor Dr. Thornton. In this project, we were tasked with creating the beginning stages of an application to get us familiar with the roles of the project manager or the project leader instead of being a code developer. Our job was to work with the customer or the client to create the appropriate application that they wanted. In our case, Dr. Thornton was our customer or our client. He also acted as our project leader and our teacher whenever we needed aid in understanding the levels of the document that we were creating or what we were supposed to be doing with each stage. In this application, we had to use gamification techniques, which is the application of typical elements of gameplay to other areas of activity. This included items such as point scoring, competition between others, and using the points that they made to purchase items. Typically, it is an outline marketing technique to encourage engagement with a product or a service. The purpose of the Marketplace application is to give instructors the ability to create these purchasable items in the store that they can be used for real class effects, and they can be purchased by the students and activated by the students. The professor can sell these items to the students through the Marketplace using this fake online currency that they award to the students, and they can be awarded based on anything that the professor decides. And this application, it would be built into the learning management of the school, such as Blackboard or Canvas, like we use here at JSU. And it can be used throughout within any course of the school based on the teacher's preferences. And because it is connected to the learning management system of the school, it can be accessed through the homepage of the learning management system, which we will see later in the document. Throughout this project, we had different stages that we had to work through, and the 8 stages that we included are listed on the right side of the screen, and we will be going through each of these stages momentarily. And once we completed each stage, we would move on to the next and complete that current stage based off of what we created in the previous stage. As mentioned before, this project took 14 weeks, and over these 14 weeks, we went through each of the previously mentioned requirements and stages for the document. In each stage, we learned what we had to accomplish, exactly how we were supposed to accomplish this stage, and we also learned any supplemental information that would help us in completing each stage. Moving on to the stages, our first stage included the client questions. These were questions that we as a team created to ask the client based on our preliminary assessment of the application. These questions were meant to gauge what the client wanted in their application, and it gave us any requirements or features that the application needed to have. So, for example, we had question 8, which was including a detailed description of what an item is, and the client answered that yes, there should be descriptions for the items viewed to the user. And question 10, which should be, is there a limit to how many items a student can receive? And there's no. A student can buy as many items as they want, as long as they have the funds to buy the items. Moving on to stage 2, we created the functional and non-functional requirements document. The functional requirements are statements of services that the systems have to provide. So this would include the features of the application that the teacher or professor can use. The non-functional requirements constrain the system that is being developed, and these would apply to the system as a whole. This can include the items such as the security of the app and the environment of the app. Both of these functional and non-functional requirements are meant to determine what the features are and how they operate. So an example of a functional requirement would be something that the user would be able to do. So the teacher would be able to create or edit an item. The teacher could also customize the appearance of the application through the settings of the application. An example of a non-functional requirement would be, like I said, the security of the app, because this app does contain sensitive information. So only the teacher using their credentials will be able to access the app. Moving on to stage 3, we have the use case diagrams. The use case diagrams are a way of describing the interactions between the users and the system using a graphical model. And as you see the little person in this diagram, that would represent the user or the teacher. And each of the bubbles represent features that the user would be able to access through the application. And these features came from the functional requirements that were listed on the previous page. For example, number 1 would be to create and sell items in the shop. And number 4 could be viewing and controlling the currency of the students. Moving on to stage 4, we create the sequence diagrams. A sequence diagram shows the interactions between the actors and the systems and between system components. A system diagram was made for each of the features listed on the use case diagram. So for each bubble, we created one of these sequence diagrams. They represent the details that are included within each feature. So for example, the teacher would be able to choose the feature to view the balance through the marketplace, and the marketplace would access the database of that marketplace and return the balance that it received from the database. Another example of a sequence diagram included being able to search for students. This one was a little trickier because it included confidential student information. So in order for a teacher to search for students, they had to request information through the marketplace. And the marketplace would access this information from Canvas and return all student IDs. From this student ID, the marketplace would go to the marketplace database and access the balance from that student. Moving on to stage 5, we created the class diagram. This diagram would show the object classes in the system and the association between the classes. It also shows the methods that would be needed for each class. So the purpose of these class diagrams would be to give the code developers an idea of the specific methods that would be needed. And as you can hopefully see on the screen, these methods inside the class diagram were taken from the methods of the sequence diagrams. And they also show the relationships between the classes in some way. For example, the teacher can directly access the marketplace, but the teacher cannot directly access the database of the marketplace. From stage 6, we moved on to the database schema. In this database schema, it defines how the data of the database is organized. They use visual representations to communicate the architecture of the database. And this database schema in particular is based off of the class diagram using the attributes that were listed in the class diagram. This one focuses more on the attributes rather than the methods of the classes, and it shows the relationships between the different classes in the database. For example, an item can only have one effect type, and an item can also have one purchase date, and only one user can purchase an item. From the database schema, we created the data dictionary in stage 7. This is a document that would define the terms used in the database schema. This document will be used by the developers in understanding what the different names and attributes from the database schema are and how they relate to each other. As seen in the database schema, there was a table listed called item. And in the data dictionary, it describes the table as, is used to hold the data about the items that have been created. And an attribute of that table was the limit of the item, which would show how many items the student can buy particularly. From stage 7, we moved on to the last stage, which was stage 8, where we created the interface mockups. And each of the interface mockups that we'll be discussing are listed on the right side of the screen. And these mockups are a realistic representation or a visual draft of the design of a website or an application. These are used to give the developer an idea of what the application in its final stages would look like. Starting with the access of the marketplace through the learning management system of the school. This is the home page of the learning management system, and through that you would have an icon to be able to click the marketplace. If you were to click on the marketplace, then it would take you to the home page of the marketplace, where it would just display the classes of the teacher, the notifications preview, and other icons that can be clicked to go to different pages. If the user were to click on the settings page, it would take them to the settings of the marketplace application. where they would have the option to change the default opening page for the appearance of the application. They would also have the option to change the notification preferences of the user and the font, possibly. These notifications can be either through the Marketplace application or through email. And then, speaking of notifications, if you were to click on the notifications icon, then the user would be able to see all the different notifications that they have received about the Marketplace, such as a supply being low for an item or an item activation. And these notifications, there are many of them, so the teacher has the option to filter them by either class, effect type, price, or duration. If the user were to click on the inventory tab, then they would be taken to a page where they have the option to create an item or view an item. If they were to click on create an item, then they would see this page. Initially, the white boxes on the right side would be empty, and the teacher would have to fill in those boxes. 3 of them, such as the class, effect type, and the duration, have drop-down boxes. The class would be the specific classes to that teacher, and they would have the option to choose which class it would apply to. And the effect type is the different items that it could be, such as bonus points, an assignment extension, or a retake. The duration can either be permanent or temporary. So permanent would be it would last the entire semester, and temporary would have a set date where it would expire. And as you can see, in the last box, the active box, it is checked, which means that students can currently purchase that item. If we were to view the items instead of creating the items, then the teacher would be able to see a list of every item that they have created. Since this can be a vast amount of items, they have the option to filter these items, either by class, effect type, price, availability, or duration. If you were to click on one of these items, it would take you to this page to view the specific attributes to that item. For example, this one is called bonus points, where students have the option to get 3 bonus points. It has a price of 100, which is a very high price for this application, and it is a permanent duration, so it would last throughout the entire semester. From this page, the teacher has the option to edit this item. Moving to the last interface markup that we have, a teacher would have the option to search for specific students. So in this example, the teacher searched for a student based on the name John Doe, and it returned every instance of John Doe throughout the teacher's marketplace. And he was in 3 different classes with 3 different goal amounts. Teachers would also have the option to search specifically by class to return all the students in the class, or specifically by price. For example, the teacher could search students in class 1 who have less than 50 gold, and it would show all students in class 1 who have less than 50 gold. As I mentioned, this was my team member information, and I want to thank you guys for listening to me today. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, I have one question. So what software you use for designing your mockups?
For mockups, I use the website Balsamic.
Okay. Great.
Yes?
I noticed one of your questions that Dr. Thornton shot down was letting students share points that they got. How do you think that would change the dynamic of the game or the class if that was allowed?
I believe that if students were able to share points, then I would hope that the students would help the students in need and share those points to students that really needed it, to give them an opportunity to help them in the class.
It's a nice optimistic person.
More questions? No?
Yes?
I'll just say I think this is a really smart idea, because even older students, they're really easy to motivate, especially with something like that. So what do you need to move forward with this? What would be the next step?
I believe Dr. Thornton already has.
Yeah, this exists and you're welcome to use it.
Oh, I can put this on the list? Okay, that's amazing.
Yeah, come check with me after.
All right. So if no more questions, then let's thank our speaker. Our next presentation will start at 9. So